Now, when I have a story conversation about something big, and it may be a product or a whole feature, I have to start with who, what, and why. Well, I can start a little bit with what the product is and why from a business perspective. And I might talk and write down as we talk and write down cards to describe our business goals. Why are we building this thing? Then I'll go deeper into who. And if this is a product or a feature, it's not just one who. There's several users and there's some details about them. And then when I start talking about users, I need to then start to imagine the future. Imagine how life will be for them when I ship this product, and I can tell a story step by step by step. The first user would do this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And as I tell a story, I can write cards left to right, and I want to get to the whole story, and then I can start breaking things down or decomposing things into details. The story maps are super simple things. I've struggled to write a book or get anything out there about them because every time I try and write something, I tend to overcomplicate it. This is a simple idea. Tell the story left to right, break it down top to bottom. That's it. These big things at the top, maybe we can call those epics, but they're not arranged by priority. They're arranged in a narrative flow. They tell a story. Show and tell just a little bit here. Shown this video a lot. I've worked with these guys. It's a company, this is a team from, is anybody here from Globo? Globo in Brazil will send people to the conference, and this is Globo is the largest media company in Brazil. They do television stations, radio stations, they make movies, lots of other things, and this is a small team managing one of Globo's web properties. And they're building a map, and they start with that long line of green cards. They start by imagining how people will use the product, and they build that whole backbone, that whole left to right flow. As they're building the product, they start to, well, they want to break up that flow by putting those pink cards on there. I'll call those green cards, those are tasks, the things that people do. They're short verb phrases. This product called Baixa Tudo, that they're looking at the old version of, it helps people find open source software and download it. And there are also users that are editors that rewrite descriptions and make this stuff more compelling to download. And they're telling the story of both these kinds of users. The activities, we might go through the steps to download something, but we'll come back later and write a P card that says, look, all these steps seem to be working together and they're about making a decision. So it looks like right making a decision there. After a while, this map stabilizes and has lots of details. Now they've got a lot of words, but remember it's words and pictures. They start to think, well, if users could do this, then what would it look like? They're building a paper prototype. Well, the UI designer asked the developer can you give me some images out of the system so I can use real images in the prototype? And he said, look, just sit with me and we can work together and create these HTML snippets. I'll select them from the database and you help me style them, and then we'll print them out and we'll organize them. This is developer and UI designer working together. Now, when you do this, you flatten up a backlog and it's filled with way too much. I happened to come in there the week after, they've added more cards, and our next discussions, and we keep discussing, are to add more cards, make sure it's complete, and make decisions about what to not build. It's these discussions over maps that are so fruitful. It's discussions over stupid little stories that drive me nuts. This guy's a bank manager, and that row of pink cards describes his life at the bank, and he can engage with it. He'll gesture wildly and point, and partly because he's Italian, and partly, and mostly because this is the way he works. If we were talking about what the checkbox should say, that wouldn't be so fruitful. Now, let me give you the punchline here. This is another team at Globo. It's 3 teams, actually, that had been working together on a major revision of a content management system. They each built their separate backlogs, and they were struggling to come up with a release. I started working with them on a Monday morning. They were stressed, and I said, need to do is get some shared understanding. You can't release separately. It's one product you've got to release together. You guys know how to do this stuff. And they said, yeah, we do. We'll get it up on the wall. And they built a map. By building a map in this narrative flow, they found holes or gaps, things that they could say, well, I thought you were doing that. No, I thought you were doing that. They found things that they had missed. They were able to add a few more things. And then I came back later, a couple days later, and they were stressed again. And I said, look, there's just way too much to build here. And I said, do you need all this stuff? And they said, yeah, we absolutely need all this stuff. And I said, how long is it going to take? And they said, it's going to take a year, which is the way they say 2 years. And I said, I know your CEO, he's not happy with things that take more than a few months. And they said, yeah, but he wants to go live for Brazilian elections, which are in 4 months. And I said, well, then the next question is, if you're looking for the outcome of this go live for Brazilian elections, what does it mean to be successful? How would you know you're successful? We talked a bit about that. We grabbed the tape and we start slicing this thing up and start shuffling things around. What's written out there on this left-hand side, well, what's in this top slice is the least we could build to be successful for that target outcome. And now that we understand, they started to organize these releases around going live with different types of properties and what needs to be done for that. And, well, those listed outcomes, that's a bit of a roadmap. Those roadmaps aren't focused on features, they're focused on big outcomes. Now, that minimal viable product word gets used in a lot of companies. It does not mean the crappiest product you could possibly build. It means the smallest product. It means the smallest product that will allow you to reach your goals. You do have to remember it's a hypothesis until you test it. And, well, if you ship it and the market hates it, then that's not viable. Now, let's fast forward here. That's a good segue into the whole product thing. Now, product and project thinking is a little different. The projects are successful when we ship on time, when the quality is good, and when a project is over, well, it's when we ship, or maybe shortly after, but a product's life does not start until you ship. It's not a product on the market. And that's when the real action starts, is after shipping. It's shifting our mindset from output to outcomes. Calling people product owners in Scrum hopefully should have that effect to shift them to the product. Let me show a couple of slides here. This is a slide from the Standish group, and this one's sort of old, and maybe some of you have heard this Standish group chaos report cited that a large percentage of our software features are rarely or never used. Depending on when you look at that report, it's anywhere from 65 to 75%. And the point here, it's easy to say just stop building stuff that people don't want to use. I've tried to tell my stockbroker to stop buying stocks that don't go up in value, but he just won't listen. And the truth is, this is hard, that lots of ideas seem like good ideas at the time. Now, I leveraged a lot of thinking from this guy, Marty Pagan, and I was working with him a little over a year ago now, and we were driving in a car and just talking nonchalantly, and he said, Gus, if you're really good at this stuff, you'll be right about half the time. And I said, whoa, what do you mean, Marty? You mean the best people are wrong half the time? And he said, yeah, that's the way it works. And he said it trivially. Marty used to be in product management, or run product management for eBay, and was one of the first product managers hired, and grew up to manage it to over 60 product managers. He knows a little something about product management. And if he says that most of the stuff you build fail, mediocre people, about a third of their stuff works. The sad thing here is we're wrong a lot, and we got to do something about that. Product thinking is focusing on those outcomes, and getting it right is difficult. I'll teach a lot to this idea that the correct product, the right product, it's not just the one that people love. It's the one that's the intersection of, it's this sweet spot between what is valuable to our organization building it, helps us meet our strategic goals as in the organization, what's valuable enough to customers that they would choose to buy it, choose to adopt it, choose to use it. And sometimes that's the right mix of features, that's the choice of problem we're solving. But then it's got to be usable enough and even desirable. If people can't use it, they don't get the value. And here's the real trick, is any idiot can come up with fabulous ideas we can't afford. It has to be feasible to build given the tools and time that you've got. That sweet spot is hard to find. And in a traditional requirements model, the people coming up with the requirements are not responsible for coming up with requirements that are feasible. If you're a product person, you are. Now, the secret here is that product people know, well, if they're good at this stuff, they know that they need to work very closely with people in user experience and people who are developers. And the dirty secret about Agile development is, yes, the product owner or product manager, somebody had asked what's the difference between those two things. Oftentimes the product owner gets saddled with all the work involved with breaking down stories and getting everything ready and working through all the details. In some organizations, the product owner is the spec monkey, the person who has to do all that stuff. But how this really works is the product manager is the product owner, and they lead a team, and that team includes user experience people. It often might include business analysts. It should include participation from a lead developer, someone you trust. And it's this team that leads activities to discover, determine if we're building the right thing, and well, continues their responsibility, acting as product ownership throughout. It's this initial discovery work that complements delivery work. And discovery work is the work we do to figure out if we're building the right thing. It's the work we do to answer the questions, what problems are we solving, what solution solves people's problems, and can they use that solution, and is it feasible to build? If you're an Agile team and you're doing a little bit of technical work to learn something, I've been talking nonstop for a while. If you're a developer doing technical work and you want to do a sprint, the goal of that work is to learn something. Anybody know what that's called? Spike. Good, thanks. You're still there. How do you estimate how long a spike takes? Yeah, good. I heard time box. The answer is you don't. You time box it because your goal is to set a budget to say it's worth this much time for me to get this answer. If you can't get the answer in that much time, then maybe we'll reconsider. Discovery is all time boxing. We time box the work we do to understand users. We time box the work we do to build prototypes, to learn. And if we don't get our answers at the end of the time box, we reassess and say, do we need more? But you don't estimate this work, and it just goes on forever. Discovery work should be collaborative. It's led by a product team, and ideally it involves everybody. It really pushes this whole shared understanding thing to a limit. We start by looking, well, first off, I'm hearing a lot less of the term Sprint Zero lately, and at this conference this year, I'm hearing the term discovery more. I can remember working with Ken Schwaber, one of the creators of Scrum once, and he said, yeah, that Sprint Zero thing, it's never supposed to be there. That's not what it is. Discovery work starts by focusing on what problems we're solving. I'll download slides, but I like this example from the people originally Alias and now Autodesk. It's from an old paper of theirs that describes the problems they were trying to solve with this release of Sketchbook Pro. And that's what our goal is from a business perspective is, well, the people who download it don't buy it. And the outcome we're looking for is the people that download it start buying it more. Now, we don't know what features it is, and we've got to do a lot more work to figure out exactly who's downloading it, but that's the problem we're trying to solve here. We move through to start talking about users, and in discovery, we'll do a lot of, what are creating lightweight personas? Now, I see a lot of UX people that will focus on really well-crafted, beautiful personas, but shared documents aren't shared understanding. When we bring the data, the information into a group, and we collaboratively construct that persona out of good data, we leave the room with shared understanding, and we construct these vacation photo style personas that has everybody understanding. We often start building personas not by doing research and then building personas, but rather leveraging what we already know. If you're a product company, you probably know a little something about your customers, but it's building the personas that helps you find gaps. You fill in gaps by then doing more focused interviews and observation. And when I go through my hard drive, I find lots of pictures of time that I've spent sitting with users and watching them walk me through their job and talk to me about what they're doing. And it's several of us that might do this, and we might come back and then try and build shared understanding again out of what we saw. There are simple tools like empathy maps to start organizing information, and something that looks like a story map, but it's describing the world as it is now. This is called a narrative journey map, and I've seen other books refer to this as an experience map. Variations of this stuff. Once I'm pretty clear about the problems I'm solving, I need to come up with lots of possible solutions. Now, these people are starting to do a practice called design studio or design sketching. They're sketching independently and then coming back together to discuss their own ideas. The goal isn't having the best, well, the goal is best ideas, not best artists, and we want everybody to work together to do this. And the aftermath of some design sketching are a lot of cobbled together things. This particular group, for the sketches you see on the right, used a lot of sticky notes and other things like that very quickly put together representations of screens and workflows. These are UI designers that have found that they can work faster outside of Photoshop and working on whiteboards. Now that's putting together a storyboard, and eventually storyboards mature into things that are simple paper prototypes. And the paper prototypes allow people, well, to do this kind of testing. If you've done things like that, it's the guy on the top is a computer, and the person on the left, she's a user, and she's trying to accomplish something. This is the trivial problem. These people are with Hewlett Packard. This is the StorageWorks division, and she's managing large disk arrays in the warehouses full of disk space. And she's using a nice interface that allows her to drag and drop the map. Look how quick that is. But it's iterating through stuff like this that helps us quickly arrive at things and gradually spool up prototypes to better and better prototypes to put in front of more sophisticated users. It's the starting to build prototypes, combining words with pictures, that helps us. It helps us latch on to it helps us find gaps, find holes, find more stories, keep fattening that backlog, and ultimately we're driving towards this thing that we can slice up and make some good choices. Let's see if in a couple of minutes I can give sort of a final punchline. There's a lot more that can be said here. Download slides to look at that. It's during discovery that we should, there's a huge subject you should all look into, and that's the huge influence of lean startup thinking. The idea that I can actually build prototypes, the idea that I can actually be fairly confident I'm building the right thing before I start to build. And using lean startup approaches, we can validate we're building the right thing, and all the spikes we start working with are building progressively more refined prototypes. Now, once we've got something that's the right thing to build, Mike Cohn and others have talked about estimation, but I want to remind people that the goal of estimation is building shared understanding. If two people are talking, ideally you want them to sort of form the same mental picture, but sometimes they don't. This is where the words and pictures thinking comes in. And then for safety's sake, the best way to build these things is to focus on using a combination of iterative and incremental thinking. Well, to work like an artist. By incremental thinking, I mean, the mistake I see most people do is to say, look, we've got this clear vision of the product, I'm going to break it into chunks, and if I'm going to build this in 5 sprints, every single sprint I'll build this thing up and add a chunk at a time. And in the end, I'll be completely done, and I'm done on time. But that works if you've got dead accurate estimation, and, well, your idea was really, really right. The truth is, our ideas, even in spite of the discovery we did, aren't always right. And if we acknowledge that we've still got something to learn, we'll take a strategy much more like Leonardo da Vinci would have taken with this, and start with a sketch, or start by building something that's cross-cutting that helps us see the whole product working, but is not shippable. It's good, the quality is high, and, but I can look at this and say, gosh, I think that smile is going to be an important part. I think we should move her hand away from her mouth, and that looks better. Now, in traditional project thinking, that's called scope creep, or bad requirements. In Agile thinking, that's called learning. And we pay attention to the calendar and gradually add more sophistication. And as we're paying attention to the calendar, we notice, gosh, it's going to be time to ship. So everything we build from here on in ought to focus on refinement. And somebody can rush in and say, hey, what about that windmill that was promised in the background? And Leonardo can say, no one will ever notice. The idea is that, well, there's I don't have it in the slide, the Da Vinci quote that the art is never finished. It's, I do have it. It's, I'll talk about that strategy, that art is never finished, it's only abandoned. Here's another secret that most product people know. Wow, the slides aren't coming through very well. We're losing some grays. I'm losing all that picture. That's, as a product person, I have never burned down a whole burn down chart. I've never built every story. You don't. You won't. The secret to finishing on time is to focus on maximizing outcome and building the stuff that allows you to get that best outcome. It's focusing on a strategy that allows you to build or maximize learning as you go. Let's put all this together. Oh, I like that picture. Those were taken at the Museum d'Orsay in Paris. Shows a sculpture being slowly built. I wasn't supposed to take pictures, so you guys don't tell anyone. But your goal, in a first sprint, you can build a perfectly formed nose, or you can build, well, something that's whole, but not sufficient to ship. But it allows us to see proportion and allows us to start to make judgments. We're at time, and let me see if I can get some summing up stuff here. If we're focusing on requirements and product management, shared documents aren't shared understanding. The successful projects aren't the same thing as successful products. If you look at any product you love and think about why you love it, I can guarantee it wasn't because it was shipped on time. That when we talk together, our goal is not to avoid documentation, but to create documentation we can really use and leverage. Leverage that vacation photo effect. It'll help you write less and keep the emphasis on being there. Don't outsource your vacations to someone else. When you're breaking things down, think asteroids. Break down when you need to and break down the level you need to. And when you're starting to, well, we need to focus on discovery, and discovery's goal is to not build everything. It's to get rid of things. And finally, when we're focusing on building, man, don't be a bricklayer. Don't break everything up into bricks and add them one at a time. Work a little bit more like an artist. Software is soft. We can add things a little bit at a time. There are 2 handouts. And these handouts are, well, they're sort of supposed to be mementos. There's one on story mapping that's in color that I was able to print at home. And take them if you want them. Email me if you didn't get a copy, and I can send you PDFs. But they talk about story mapping and talk about the flow. And these, which I didn't get printed before I got here, well, you can see they kind of echo back the things that we talked about. That stories are about storytelling, and we write a little bit on the card and talk, and focus on agreeing what to build. And there's only one side got printed on what I thought. This has two sides. The other side is a lot better. Now, because we're short on time, you have an obligation here. I want you to think about this later thing. And I want you to think about those two things. Look back at your pains that you might have written on the now side. Does anything we talk about start to address a pain? Look back to your preconceptions about Agile development, and did anything change? Now, I know from where we started that, frankly, you guys were all pretty smart. And I doubt for none of you that I've taught you much you didn't know already. I'm available to answer questions, and I'm around here. Thank you guys very much for sitting in.